where he was like, well, Travis, I feel like, and we're 14 years apart. He's like, man, I feel like you're so far ahead. Like, how did that happen? And that was because, I was working full time when I was going to college, and my job paid for my education. And, I had a 401k and I was saving money. So I didn't get that college experience that some people get. And I feel like I missed out maybe a little bit, but I was ahead of the game, especially compared to somebody who left college with not much experience and, with some debt. So I'm at a point in my life now where I'm reaping those rewards, and I would say it's worth it.
You're listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast, where you'll hear the stories and interviews of everyday millionaires. We'll unveil their decisions, their strategies, and their current portfolio allocation. Now to your hosts, Clark Sheffield and Jace Mattinson.
Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of the Millionaires Unveiled podcast. This is Clark here alongside my co-host Jace for episode 174. Jace, what's going on? How are you?
Doing all right, man. Just trying to survive the snowpocalypse, ice-pocalypse down here in Texas. It's pretty nuts. No power half the time.
Jason's
water,
wife
sewer.
Tells us not to talk about the weather, but
dude,
we had some crazy weather this week.
Dude,
so tell Stacy we're going to talk about the weather.
Well, yeah, she'll probably enjoy listening to us talk about the weather, because as we speak right now, she is trying to melt some snow on our stove to get us some water. So using the gas that we still have access to, because everything else, sewer, water, we actually have power at the moment of recording this, but we haven't had power for most of the day and yesterday, and it's wild, dude. We aren't prepared. I mean, we are prepared. Like, I always keep some emergency preparedness stuff, but typically these kinds of things don't really happen in Texas. We have hurricanes, and the water comes in once, and it's usually over on the coast, not necessarily where we live. And even with Harvey last year, it didn't really, or 2 years ago, didn't really affect us. But this has affected the whole state.
Time to go dig into your canned peaches, man.
Yeah, the canned peaches, the MREs. I've got a sweet little water purifier that I've never used, but I have it. So
what's an MRE?
A meal ready to eat. It's like military.
Oh yeah.
You just add water to them and stuff. Yeah.
Like this, dude. The one that I want is the space food. You ever go to like the space?
Oh yeah.
Sitting in the like little plastic sandwich thing.
Yeah. No, that ice cream's my favorite. But yeah, it's been wild, man. Everything's closed. Like, grocery stores closed. Chick-fil-A's closed. Gas stations are out of gas. It's insane. It's nuts. Pandemonium.
Chick-fil-A closed on a non-Sunday. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, dude, 2 days in a row.
Wow.
It's wild, man.
Well, we got some fun things coming up. We just interviewed a welder this evening.
Yeah, man.
That's an interesting interview. If you enjoy the show, leave a review. Helps us grow the show. This week, Aaron shared a review. So thanks to Aaron. He says, if you enjoy personal finance, then you'll love this podcast. The episodes are easy to listen to, cover a wide range of experience, and provide the listener with the full details of each millionaire's journey. Keep up the great work. So thanks to Aaron for that. Last week on the show, we had Caleb. He's an entrepreneur, net worth about $8 million. He has 700 liquid, and the rest, about 7.3 or so, tied up in his business. And so he talks about what he does, keeping a year of payroll in a savings account. He's 24 years old, so a young millionaire. Today's show, we have Travis. He's in the telecommunication industry for 27 years. He's about 40 years old, has 20 units in real estate, and is worth about $2.7 million. And his focus is more on income than net worth. He also has about $700,000 in his 401k and $1.6 million in real estate. So fun interview coming up with him. One thing, Jace, we were talking about, I mean, so often the 401k, I'm just reminded of this with Travis having about $700,000 in his 401k. One thing that came up with Biden that Biden's proposed is changing some of these 401k rules and offering it to small businesses that don't offer it within their company. So one thing he proposed is the federal bank or some sort of other government bank holding the money, but everybody's eligible to contribute to a 401k even if your workplace doesn't offer it. And I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah, no, I totally think so too. I mean, it gives more. We talked about this on the episode recorded tonight with our welder. He's been in, essentially union type work most of his career and has a pension, and one of his companies got acquired, so he's got pensions from former employers and all this kind of thing. And those are just a thing of the past. Unless you're in some sort of government type role, I mean, the pensions are they're a thing of the past. They're kind of an archaic way of saving for retirement. And so, and what we've got now is, Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, 401ks, and the greater employee base, or solopreneur or just in general, the workforce in general in this country, most people are employed by a small business, whether it's their own or somebody else's. And a lot of them don't have access to, a 401k plan. So they're very limited in, saving for retirement in a tax advantaged account. So I think it's a great idea. Kind of opens that up to more people and incentivizes them to save. Because as we know, the Social Security is going to be running out here for you and I.
Yeah, and I think he's also proposing additional increase in catch-up contributions. So if you're over the age of, 50 or 55, you can contribute more. But what I think they should do is combine the two programs, the IRAs and the 401ks, and just say, whatever it is, 20 grand or 19.5 right now for the 401k plus 6,000, 6,500 or whatever in your Roth. So let's call it 25k. Just combine those two programs. And if the employer wants to contribute a percentage, then great. But allow everybody to be able to donate up to, or to contribute up to that 25k if they want. It doesn't make sense that because a small business somebody works for doesn't sponsor a 401k plan that they lose out on that retirement saving option. So I think it's a great idea. And anyway, just something to watch and something to keep track of. I think it's interesting coming up. Let's talk real estate real quick. If you are interested in investing, send us an email. We'll get you a link. And then connect through and give you a few of the offering memorandums that we've done historically, looking for multifamily or commercial syndication opportunities, and you're a accredited investor, let us know. Also, if you have a good deal to bring, let us know. If you have something you want to sell, or you're a broker, or something comes up, happy to work with you and on that as well. So send it over if you find something good. But thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Hope everybody learned something from each of the millionaires. We're just trying to tell their stories and help all of us learn. So without any further delay, please help me welcome Travis to the show.
Travis, do you want to just give us a little bit about your background and what you're up to now?
Yeah, so just actually had a change of jobs. I've been in the same industry. I was in the telecom industry for pretty close to 20 years, kind of transitioning into agriculture. And, next month I turn 40. So I feel like I'm right in that middle age of my life. So it's kind of a good time to make a job transition. Give a little bit more background. My primary interest for income is real estate. So as far as like a passion for making some money, I would say real estate has sort of been my interest, and I've worked really hard kind of on a personal aspect at making sort of a real estate business work. I've got about 20 units, or exactly 20 units. So that's where we're at with that. And it's been growing the last several years pretty well. I've got that business stable. The last couple of years, I did some real big growth. And so I was kind of, with this COVID thing and everything hitting, I was really just at the point where it kind of made me a little nervous, but it's all worked really well. I've really got things stabilized. 2 days ago, I got my last unit rented. So I'm feeling really good. We're at 100% capacity and everybody's paying their rent. So that's good, or the majority of their rent. Yeah. So that's really where I'm at. I do, I do have like a Roth IRA and all that stuff, but I kind of use somebody else for that. That's not my passion, is not managing or, day to day looking at stocks and this and that. That stuff is a little more passive for me.
Totally. Yeah. And we'll get into all the details. But before we do, net worth is sitting where today?
Right at about 2.7 million, I think. So, and I don't really focus on that so much as kind of trying to get my income going. So I sort of realized with the real estate holdings, at some point that's likely to go down. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point it's 2 million instead of 2.7 million. But as long as I'm still cash flowing money each month, then I'm happy.
Yeah, it's an interesting shift. Clark and I have talked with a few millionaires on the show about that. One way to keep score is net worth, right? And I think it's very easy for us to get into the net worth game. And I think it's a great way for a majority of us to really actually keep score and, look and see what progress we've made. But like you mentioned, at some point, that net worth is going to get, become some sort of income stream, whether it's withdrawing from a 401k or IRA or whatever, or pulling cash flow from real estate. And that's really what, the crux of everything that everyone's really after is that income stream to live off of. So I want to get into just the breakout, though, for our listeners and your net worth percentage-wise. How much do you have in your real estate versus maybe some of the market investments that you have?
So, total net worth is 2.7 million. If I'm looking at it, we have, so in my I just rolled a 401k over into Edward Jones. That's 556,000. My wife and I each the last couple of years ago, we started Roths at 17,000. We set some money aside for my son when he was born. We've got about 62,000 in there, and then another small account with about 12,000. So that total is about 667,000. And then I probably should have added up the homes. It's really equities. Yeah, about 1.6 million in equity in real estate.
Wow. And that includes your primary residence, or those are just rentals?
That includes my primary residence, yes.
Okay, wow, that's pretty phenomenal. The money that you have invested in the or I guess in your IRA and 401k, is that all invested in the market, in securities or bonds or both? Or
yeah, so it's it's all mutual funds. Some of it is in bonds. I'm more on the aggressive side, so I'm fairly young. I use a financial advisor, and so, he kind of helps me out for the most part. I have some input, like from time to time. I'm really big on relationships, and I have developed some relationships with some key people, including the financial advisor, but then some other people that I have a lot of trust in. And, so I make some changes from time to time and don't lean 100% on him. But we're towards the aggressive side and coming towards a time when I may get a little less aggressive here, closer to the election, that sort of thing. I feel like the market's pretty high and we're headed into some kind of crazy times, I think.
Yeah, totally. So, you have quite the balance in those for being the age that you are. How long have you been contributing to those, and is it something that you max out every year?
Yeah, so my stories, I guess maybe that's the most interesting part of my story. I could almost nail it down exactly for you. I got my first professional job when I was 21. Or my first job making real money, I guess I would say. And I think I had $2,200 to my name, and that was November 1st, 2001. So I can tell you that was what I had, that, and I owned a truck in 2001. So that was where I was at pretty close to 20 years ago. And I was fortunate to get a job that made pretty good money. I think the first couple of years I made about $60,000 a year. That ramped up by about 2006 to around 100. It was a commission-based job, so what was a base pay plus a commission. So I had some years I made 120,000. I had some years I made 100,000, starting around 2005. We had a 401k match up to 6%. So I always put in at least 6%. Most of the time I put in, more than that. When I was really young, the first few years, I didn't have many bills or anything like that. Wasn't trying to save for a house at that point in time. So I was probably putting in 12 to 15%. I was making a lot more money than I had before. And I really understood compound interest. And I knew, okay, if I put in this extra money that I'm not used to having now, that's going to add up later in life. So I kind of always had a penchant for investing or for saving. I like to live well and do fun things and stuff like that. But at the same time, I know if life's going to get easier as we go along, you kind of got to work hard in the beginning, pays off sooner.
Yeah, totally. So how did you get that passion at such a young age? Most people that are 21 are out hitting the bars, spending all the extra dollars they have on some beers, and you were sitting there contributing, granted making great money at that age, but how did you have that insight to do that?
I think I was lucky in that I had a dad that taught me a lot about that. So he was pretty open when we were growing up, and from time to time, they ran into this, maybe not some major money troubles, but, there was some disagreements between my mom and my dad about saving and spending and some issues along that. And so my dad was pretty open with me and, talking about credit cards and debt and that sort of thing. So I kind of got a pretty good understanding of that when I was really young. I was lucky in that my dad kind of was open with his finances and how things were going and how to set yourself up for success. So, and I think I just took an interest in it as well. So, I took an interest in it. He was willing to share, and it worked out well.
So you mentioned the Roths, Travis. You started them a little later. How come? Is it because you didn't know about them, or you were maxing out other retirement accounts?
Yeah, I was really just maxing out other retirement accounts, the 401k. And then, I live in the Bay Area of California. It's expensive. So as I got a little bit older, that came to light. I had some people that were saying hey, you might want to do that. if you're going to put 20% down on a house in the Bay Area, you're looking at, $150,000. So, or more. So you really got to save some money. And that's how so that was why.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to follow up with a couple of things you mentioned to Jace that I thought were interesting. So the first, you said you're pretty aggressive in your stock portfolio, right? And I didn't quite catch it. Is it mostly it's all stocks, no bonds?
I mean, it's all in mutual funds. So
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we're 10 to 15% in bonds, and it's spread out all around. So it's, mid cap, large cap, international. So I really just talk to my financial advisor once a quarter. We have a meeting once a quarter, but I actually probably talk to him once a month. He's become a pretty good friend of mine. I've referred a lot of business to him. I mean, and that's one thing I would tell people is that developing really good relationships with people that are in control of your money is really helpful. I mean, nobody's going to look after your money better than you are. But at the same time, developing a close relationship with people that are managing your money and also people that that are good with money, they'll take you under their wing most of the time, and they will give you that good advice if you show an interest, just like my dad did. I've done that with some, as we get into this interview a little bit more, I can share a little bit more about, property manager, mortgage broker, some people like that have really helped me grow just because I showed an interest. And then I also referred customers to them.
So your portfolio, I was just curious, your portfolio being more aggressive now, when do you think that's going to shift? Is it going to shift? Meaning, are you going to be more heavily in bonds when you retire? Or do you think with, you're at 2.7 million, right? Or ish, right? Just over that. With your net worth high, and as you continue to build it up here, I mean, you're relatively young. Is the net worth going to be high enough and the passive income going to be high enough that you won't need to reallocate those investments? Or are you going to be more conservative in bonds when you're closer to retirement?
I think I would probably always stay on the aggressive side with the balance in my portfolio. I mean, the stocks to me, like I have almost managed things in the sense where like I think I can live off the real estate alone practically. And so then, just taking what I have to take from the stock and from 401ks and that sort of stuff, like I don't even focus on that so much. And I have been fortunate. I have done fairly well for my age. But I think that I would keep that stuff aggressive. And I know in talking, one of my previous employees was really good with numbers, and our company laid him off. It was good. He got a good thing. And he's now a financial advisor for Edward Jones. And so that's part of the reason I have such a good relationship with him. It kind of says that like you're better off if you can balance your portfolio, if you can have enough money to where you can make it through the downturns. You're going to be better off if you stay aggressive. So sure, you might have a year or two where you're really trying not to access that money at all. But if you can make it through those bad times and you stay aggressively invested, you're going to do better off in the long run and have more money. So you just have to have funds set aside to make it through the bad times. You can't need the money, so to speak.
Right. No, I'm with you. I was just curious if that, I think some of the allocation for some of our millionaires starts to shift at different points in their life. Maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't. I don't know. I think for everybody it's different, but just curious to get your take. The other thing you mentioned to Jace, I wanted to ask you about, you said you found it a good thing, I guess, to work harder in the beginning, right? And having it pay off later. Are you happy you did that? Do you look back and say, hey, I wish I would have done more, or I wish I would have spent more? Or are you happy now looking back and saying, hey, that's how I did it. Maybe I didn't spend as much, maybe I didn't do as much, but now I can reap the financial rewards. Was it a good balance for you?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question because I have a friend of mine. So I'm almost 40. I have a friend. He's 27, 28. So he's a little bit younger. And he had the typical college experience, right? So or maybe not typical, maybe a high-end college experience. So he and his wife, they both went to college and they didn't work much in college. They graduated college with some debt. And, then they got pretty good jobs afterwards, pretty good income, and they've been working hard to pay off that debt and try to save money for a house. And homes here are really expensive. So it's difficult and rent's really expensive. So it makes it hard to save when your rent's really expensive, right? Especially if you're paying off other debt. And we had a conversation not long ago where he was like, well, Travis, I feel like, and we're 14 years apart. He's like, man, I feel like you're so far ahead. Like, how did that happen? And that was because, I was working full time when I was going to college, and my job paid for my education. And, I had a 401k and I was saving money. So I didn't get that college experience that some people get. And I feel like I missed out maybe a little bit but I was ahead of the game, especially compared to somebody who left college with not much experience and, with some debt. So I'm at a point in my life now where I'm reaping those rewards, and I would say it's worth it. I wasn't a big partier or something like that. I mean, I had fun, I went on dates, I went out with friends, we had some parties and stuff like that. So I wasn't just a total stick in the mud, but the rewards now are definitely worth it. So just being ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm curious because Jason and I talk about it frequently. How much should you spend on a vacation? Should you buy this or buy that, or how much to enjoy it now, right? While you're trying to, you always hear life is short, but at the same time, you want to be financially free too. And so trying to find that balance, I think, can be hard.
Yeah. And, my wife would argue that, and she's a conservative person. She doesn't spend a lot of money. So I got really lucky in that regard. She doesn't buy lots of shoes or expensive clothes or something like that. But she wants those experiences more than I do. And the older I get, we have a 6-year-old son now, the more I realize that stuff's really important, So we bought a travel trailer a couple of years ago because we like to camp. So we've been to Yellowstone. We've been up to the Sierras several times, and doing those things has been a ton of fun. So yeah, I think now in middle age with a family, I value those experiences more than maybe I would have partying a little bit more in college or something like that. So I'm really thankful to be comfortable financially at this point in my life where, we wanted to buy we were conservative. We bought a $20,000 travel trailer, but, we pulled it with a 15-year-old truck. So it's worked out.
Yeah. So when did the real estate start?
So I was really lucky with the real estate, we were, to give you an idea, I was making $100,000+ a year. My wife was making $80,000+ a year and no debt. I mean, we didn't have a car payment, nothing like that. And we were looking to buy homes around here, and it felt like we just really couldn't afford it. And I remember telling her, if people like us making $180,000 to $200,000 a year, if we can't afford it, something's got to change. It just can't stay that way. And so we bought our house. Actually, February 29th, 2008 was the day that it closed. And we could have done better. If we would have waited another year or two, we would have done quite a bit better on the price. I remember feeling a little agitated about that. And, we bought on the downward slide, but we could have saved $150,000. And that was when, but we were still living well under our means, no car payments, nothing like that. We were saving money. I had a couple of investments with the company that I worked for, was going to pay me out, $40,000, $50,000 over the next couple of years. And so I just decided, let's go buy some real estate. And so we started buying investment real estate in 2010.
Wow. Good time to buy, right?
I wish I would have bought everything I looked at.
I've heard of people. Yeah, I've heard that on other podcasts. There's one where the guy's like, we were spinning our wheels, trying to decide which of the two properties to buy. We only had X amount of capital, whatever it was, I can't remember. And we had enough money to just buy one of the two deals. And we kept going back and forth. Which one's better, A or B, A or B? And he's like, now I look back and I'm like, dang it, I should have found a way to buy both of them.
Yeah. So, anybody who bought then looks like a genius, but you had to be funny. There wasn't a lot of people with good credit and money. That was the hard part back then.
And was it much harder to get a loan? Or because you had the good credit and the cash and the higher income, was it okay for you?
Well, it was difficult to get a loan. So the first property that we bought is the only real estate I've ever sold. It was a condo. And you had to, if you were going to use back then, and I don't know if it's different now, you had to, in order to use the income of the rent to qualify for the purchase price of the property, you had to have been a landlord for a year. And so clearly we didn't have that. So a real estate agent friend of mine, he's actually a broker. I told him what I was looking for. I was looking for a condo. I had a friend who had bought a couple of condos. And so we bought a condo for $105,000 cash. So that was our very first property. And we felt safe
with the intent to rent it out.
Yeah. So we had our home, and then that was 2008, and we had saved, another $100,000, and we bought the condo knowing, it had $300 in association fees, but it rented for I don't remember, $1,250 or $1,300 a month or something like that. So we knew we were making money and probably going to do what we kind of have already done with multiple multifamily real estate properties.
Yeah. So now let's just, for our listeners here, big picture. So you mentioned earlier, right? 20 units, pretty much fully leased now. What do those cash flow? How much do you collect?
So if everything's rented, so for the first time, I went through a 1031 exchange, January 8th, 2019. I sold that original condo and I went and I bought 10 units that were kind of undervalued, did a whole big renovation, had to, move some people out and things like that. But if everything's rented right now, we're about $22,500 a month in monthly rents. And, one thing I'll say, like, I've always been conservative in trying to make sure there's a cushion. So my mortgages, including my the house that we live in, is $10,375. So I've always tried to keep it where the mortgages are less than half of the monthly rents that come in. When I'm at that level, I feel very comfortable. And, I usually don't include my personal home, but in that calculation, that actually had our home for the first time. We're kind of there.
So what does that mean? The rents are about $22,000. So you're netting what, 10 or something, 8 after repairs?
Yeah. So, that's the thing. You always have some expenses, right? Sometimes someone's moving out or whatnot. So yeah, we're about $7,000 or $8,000 a month. And I think that, there's actually room to go up from there with some of the rents. So my goal has been, you set many goals for yourself along the way. And so a couple of years ago in 2018, when I decided to sell the condo and to do this 1031 exchange and go buy some other properties, my goal was to earn $10,000 a month. And I think in the next couple of years, we're going to get there. We're pretty close right now, but I continue, my method of investing has kind of been to stay away from where the big money is. I sort of learned that in the beginning. So we're Bay Area, right? California, things are super expensive. When real estate was really hot in 2010, I could see properties and I was like, that's a no-brainer. Let's go buy that. That's a no-brainer. Let's go buy that. I felt like I had all my ducks in a row. I'm pre-approved. I've got my money down, ready to go. And I'd go in there and someone with what I called at the time, real money would come in and just smoke me. They'd offer cash or something like that, So I had to go to the secondary and the tertiary markets. So places where they weren't quite looking and scoop up those deals. So I've kind of found a knack for that, and as real estate went higher and higher and higher, that's where it got easier to make the money. You weren't competing against the really big companies that had tons of equity. And honestly, that's where the rents could go up more. So I kind of specialized in, okay, let's take this property. It's in maybe it's in an up and coming area, an area that's, getting better. And then let's take it and let's fix it up. Let's fix the outside, make it look nice, go in, fix up the whole inside. And I don't make them super nice, but try to do the value adds and then get the rents up a little bit. So,
So where are you buying?
So I bought in South Monterey County back in 2010, 2011, 2012. And then in the Central Valley, Merced is the actual town that I bought the 10 units and the 4 units in over the last couple of years. And I picked that town because it got hit the hardest. Wikipedia claims the hardest in the country in 2008. But in 2009, they opened UC Merced, so a brand new college there. So that has brought a whole lot of students from other places in the Central Valley there. And I bought pretty close to that side of town and just in an area that's getting better and better and better. So that's made it easy to get the rents up and cash flow.
Okay, cool. So still in California and still close to you. I don't know if you were going out of state, but all in state close to you.
Yeah. And, I've thought about going out of state and there's some good reasons to do that. It just sort of hasn't been in my comfort level. I have a very close relationship with a property manager. He's a property manager and he's also been my real estate agent. And, he helped me through the 1031 exchange. He knew that market. So we identified that market. It's 2 hours from us, but he has some friends and some other people over there that's helped us out as far as with maintenance. He has some connections with maintenance people, painters, that sort of thing. So even though it's a little ways away, he still manages them. And we kind of knew what we were doing. So the managing, from afar, a plane trip away is a little frightening to me, but down the road, that might be something we look at because
Sure.
California is getting so difficult. The rent control thing that they put into effect last year, they kind of, I bought in January and my goal was to sort of slowly raise the rents, do a good job, renovate the property. I spent about $100,000 on the property. Took all the trim off the building on the outside, painted the building, painted the insides of the units, replaced carpets that needed to be replaced, appliances, those sort of things. And my plan was to, raise the rents gradually so that people wouldn't get a shock, because they were very, very low, which was why I was able to get a good deal. When you buy a commercial property that is, more than 4 units, the value of the property is based on the rents. So since this particular property, the owner hadn't been raising his rents, I was able to get a better deal and know, okay, if I go in, I spend the money to make it nice, I can raise the rents, and hopefully I can do it slowly so that I don't really shock anybody. But then they backdated the rents to March 15th, 2019, which, I had already outlaid all my capital and things. That threw some wrenches in my plans and made things a little more difficult, but luckily we made it through.
Your ratios are pretty good, right, Travis? So you mentioned that not much debt on a lot of these, right? You have pretty low leverage.
Yeah, I mean,
like one of them you have looks at like 20% levered, and the others are around 50%. I mean, there's a couple that are a little higher, but it's not like you're 75, 80% on all these.
Yeah, I mean, that was a factor. I mean, everything I bought, I put at least 25% down. Even the 10 units, it was 35%. We bought those in 2019. But the other properties, it was just that I bought them in, 2010 and 2012, right around that time frame. So, they were just smoking deals at the time, and rent has gone up in that time frame. So,
and yeah. these are all yours, or do you partner with people, or
all mine and my wife? So we've done all this on our own.
Wow, it's pretty amazing. How much do you guys spend a year?
That's a pretty good question. I mean, not counting anything coming out of the rentals, I would probably guess we spend, I don't know, $85,000 a year, something like.
No, I'm just curious, because if you're netting $8,000 a month from these, right, that gives you $96,000 a year.
Yeah.
And you got the stock portfolio.
Yeah.
I think you know what's coming. Do you ever just say, like, I'm done? I'm gonna take this passive cash flow, right? My leverage is pretty low. I'm gonna pay out. These are gonna get paid off, and I'm gonna live off this cash flow.
I mean, well, the $10,000 a month was the goal, right? And you got to realize that, I had 7 units, not 20 units in 2018. So January 2019, I bought the 10 units. I mean, I laid out $100,000 to fix the parking lot, fix all that, the outside of the building, the inside of the building, those kinds of things. So we're getting to a really comfortable position, and I'm really proud of that. But I think the goal now has changed to probably $200,000 a year, and then maybe we retire. So, I recently changed jobs. I'm really fortunate to have a place I really like to work with, something that I'm really interested in. There's a really good balance of work and personal life. So I don't feel the crunch that I did previously, where, I really didn't want to be there. Previously, I would say I was making sacrifices that I didn't want to, that I didn't enjoy. And now, if I need to come home at a certain time, I can. So I'm happy with that. And I think, work another 20 years and try to reinvest all that money. That's been my strategy all along with the real estate. And it's worked flawlessly, where, just all that money goes right back in, and we grow that part of the business. And I didn't think I would be here when I started back in 2010. I didn't think that we would be making $8,000, $9,000 a month. That was a goal, but it has kind of worked out. I sort of feel a little bit lucky, but at the same time, I worked really hard, lots of weekends, over painting, looking for things, just doing that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think that day's coming, but now I don't have to be so involved in the day-to-day part. Like, I'm not going over at night and painting apartment buildings or doing something like that. The money's coming in. So, we let that money build up for a few years. And when the time is right, we'll buy another rental property. So that's sort of the plan with that, is to let that kind of build itself.
No, and just to your last point, I think it's a good point. And I'm curious, how do you know when to pull the trigger? Is it just when you find a good deal? I mean, how do you know? Is there a point where you say, geez, I have $200,000 in cash, I got to get rid of it, I'm going to find something? Or do you just wait for something to come, and whenever it comes is when you pull the trigger? How do you know when you have too much cash or how much to hold?
Yeah, that's the tough question, right? And you kind of, that's fluid. I think you don't know, like, if real estate goes really low. I think I'll be much better now at recognizing when that time is, than I was before. Had I, back in 2010, I could think of many investments that I could have afforded pretty inexpensively that would have panned out. Now I think it's tough. People want, all my friends want to buy homes, but they're so expensive. It almost doesn't make sense. And so I think you've got to really look at the picture, and I'll stick to that formula of, hey, does this make real sense? Like, is the mortgage is it barely going to cover the mortgage? If the property's barely going to cover the mortgage, then no way. There's some people who would buy properties like that where they feel like, hey, they're going to go up in value. That's never been my play. I've always been after the cash flow property, the property that makes money every month. I'm more comfortable with that. So I'm not afraid to, it's the same thing when we bought our house. I mean, we were saving money, right? We knew that it was unaffordable for everybody else, and I knew that things had to change. So there might come that time where I built up $300,000-$400,000 or something like that. And then I know I can go buy a property that's maybe a little bit overpriced and it'll make money. At the same time, I think when you have that amount of money, it's a little bit easier to go find a deal. You're kind of competing against the people that I was trying to compete against when I kept getting smoked when there was good deals, right? So the more money you have, the easier it is to go in and say like, okay, I'll buy this place cash. Or maybe there's a property that has some problems and you can't get a Fannie Mae or a Freddie Mac mortgage. And so you can go in and you have the money to buy it and fix whatever's wrong. And then maybe you flip it or maybe you rent it out. So I think those options, the more money you get, the more those options open up. And that's kind of what I've realized in the last several years.
Travis, I got to ask something. As you built up this portfolio, what keeps you from maybe cashing out and refinancing some of these properties and taking that capital and going buying, several all at once?
So, well, I actually did that, and I took out a home equity line of credit a little over a year ago because we had a bunch of equity in our house, and I did go buy one property. That was sort of an experiment for me because, I was looking for ways to make money. I don't sit still well, and, just sort of needed a project. And so we did buy the last 4 units that we bought over in Merced. They were like, there was one block that's kind of bad in a bad neighborhood, but all around it is pretty nice. And like I said, that part of town has been getting better. So I knew that like, okay, this is a bit of a project, and that's been a little bit of a pain, but I was ready for that. So I've done that, but I'm still conservative. And that's it's sort of fun for me. I knew that there was some risk there and I might regret it down the road. But at the same time, I knew that I could afford it. Like, we can easily absorb it. If it ends up being a mistake, it ends up being a mistake. But that's where maybe the education is worth that, right? So if it costs you $20,000, $40,000, $50,000, well, you learned something. It was not a huge amount of money to lose. But I think in the long run, we can absorb that and it'll pan out. Yeah, so I have done that one time, and we're in the middle of that experiment.
Awesome. So as you continue here, you mentioned that you wanted to get to 200,000. Do you have any other goals out in the future in the next decade or so? Is there a net worth target that you want, or is it really just honing in on that $2,000 mark that you can kind of live off of?
Yeah, I mean that's always been it for me, is finding ways to increase your monthly return, what you earn. Because I think another friend, he's more on he wants to invest, but he's more on investing in really nice places and places that will go up in value. My question always to him is, well, how do you enjoy that? How do you, if that property, it's going to go up and you own this beautiful property and you can take me by and you can show me like, oh, I've got this place in Carmel that I own and it's worth $300,000-$400,000 more now than when I bought it. Well, how do you enjoy that on a monthly basis? How does that give you a return? And, I guess you could refinance it and you could pull some money out. But at the same time, like, I want to be to that point where I could just not work. And if I don't have to work, then that to me is more enjoyable. So that's the focus. I do not look at the value of it. In fact, I would not be surprised if the value of my portfolio goes down in the next couple of years to some degree. But I'm 100% okay with that as long as the money's still coming in every month.
Yeah, totally. So now let me ask this. Why not self-direct what you have in the market and go invest in real estate for the cash flow?
I guess most of it's in 401k and I would probably have some penalties. So I don't want to take that risk. And I think that being balanced is the way to go. You never know what's going to happen. So I like the balance that I have between the two.
So in terms of management, Travis, for the real estate, do you self-manage everything?
No, I have a property manager. So a guy I have a close relationship with. I managed his account, part of his account for his business. That was how we met. And so he manages my real estate. I used to manage, one of the bills that he has on a monthly basis. And, we know each other that way. So he charges me, 6% to manage that. And we talk, once a week or so about different things. So, and a property manager, in my opinion, I've referred quite a few people to him, is worth its weight in gold, or it's worth more than you pay. That's for sure. So, the amount of discounts that you get they have relationships with people like painters or people where you're buying appliances from, or, just every single plumbers, electricians, all those vendors. So when you get to 10, 15, 20 units, you've got people, you can't go do that stuff. Or if you have a regular job, you're not going to be able to, call and manage those people. And the discounts that he gets because he's got, I don't know, he has 2,000 units or something like that. So he keeps these people busy all the time. So I'm not paying the regular retail rate. I'm paying a reduced rate because he gets a volume discount. So between that and then him, giving me a little bit of a discount because I've got 20 units, I don't think there's any way I could save money by doing it myself. And not to mention keeping the rents at market rate. He's pretty aggressive at, getting me top rates. And then you don't have to be the bad guy either. So somebody's, not paying their rent, they go serve the notice. All those things are just way more of a headache. So if you're good at, finding deals, or you can just do what you're good at. But you have 1 or 2 units, yeah, maybe you want to manage them. But beyond that, I would do a property manager every time.
No, it's a good answer. And it's things I think people don't think about, right? In terms of the discounts. You're not going to Home Depot to buy a toilet, right? You're getting it cheaper.
Yeah.
Did you always do that, or did you self-manage when you had just a few, or when did you make that switch?
No, so I've known him since before I started investing in real estate, and just used him from the very beginning. So I'm a really loyal person. Same thing with my mortgage broker, use the same guy every single time. Sometimes, you can shop around, you can kind of play things to try to work people against each other. And that's never been my deal. I've always just stayed loyal to people and tried to make recommendations to them. Now, if somebody, if I don't like the relationship, I have changed a time or two, with someone like an insurance broker or something like that. But I've always found that if you find the right person and then you kind of stick with them, they'll advise you really well. And yeah, that's been the way I've done it.
Yeah, neat. No, I was just curious. So where do you go from here?
Just keep playing the same game I've been playing, live off less than we earn now. That's what we do, continue to save money and try, we live comfortably. We take trips, we drive decent enough cars, nothing fancy. Keep my wife happy with a few trips. We were supposed to go to Ireland this year, and unfortunately, that didn't work out. So a little bit more travel, and then, try to get to that 200,000 a year mark. And then we really got to decide what to do. And I really think that's attainable. The bigger it gets, the more that, passive income gets, the easier it is to grow. So, we can maybe be there in 10, 15 years and then, decide, do we retire or do we work a few more years? So let my wife retire first for sure. So she's been working at her job for quite a few years. I tell her when she gets us medical insurance for life, which she might be able to do another 10 years, then she can retire. So then I have to decide, how long do I work?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting to think about. So I asked this, Travis, to a few other millionaires that we've had on the show that have high incomes and also have a lot going on the side in terms of real estate or business investments or that sort of thing. How have you decided, or let me back up, managing your career? How have you been able to manage and grow and increase your income through your career and also build up this real estate portfolio on the side? Obviously, hiring out the management helps, right? You're not having to go over there on a Thursday night and fix a toilet when something goes wrong. But at the same time, how have you been able to say, okay, I have X amount of hours in the day. I'm going to put this much towards my career and really try and grow and progress and increase my income there? or I'm going to put this much time towards finding another real estate deal or learning about real estate or finding a good mortgage broker to partner with. How do you balance your time on those two aspects? Because either one can be demanding, right? And if you try and do them at the same time, sometimes I feel like it's hard to find that balance.
Yeah. Another good question. I had to look at where I was going to get the most return from. And that was how I made the decision. So there was a time with the previous company I was working for where, I wanted to climb that ladder, and I kind of ran into some walls basically where I was going to have to move around, and this was home for us and we didn't want to move. And so that was when I shifted gears and decided, well, I'm at this place where I'm stable in my career and I can do a good job. The job got pretty easy. I could do it without a whole lot of, I knew what to expect and I knew what I needed to do in order to do a good job. I always wanted to do a good job for my employer. I want to make sure that I was earning my paycheck and giving them what they needed. But at the same time, there came a point where I shifted gears. I said, well, okay, this is where I can get more return based on the energy that I spend. And so, I spent some time working really hard for a couple of years, growing that real estate. And there was 2 points in my career with them where I did that. And, at one point I worked really hard at that because I was comfortable in what I was doing. And then I changed jobs with them in order to try to climb the ladder. And that didn't really pan out because I was going to need to move. So then I, spent a few more years working on the real estate. And now, I kind of got that to a stable place, and I was able to find another job in another completely other industry that I'm very excited to have. And so, I know I kind of got to put this on hold and make sure, the real estate, like I'm not going to be spending as much time and energy there, but I got to go learn this other industry and make sure that I'm, doing what I need to do for the employer. And there might come a time when it's time to grow the real estate and work on that a little bit more again.
Yeah.
So I would say looking at where you're going to get the most return for your time investment, because your time is limited.
Right. So as you look back on your journey, Travis, 2.7 million, fairly young. Obviously, it's going to continue to grow as you buy more rentals or keep working, right? Are there a few things that you can point to that say, hey, that's why I've been so successful? Was it that you worked so much early on? Was it that you were willing to take a chance and buy this real estate? And is there a few things that you can point out and say, hey, that's why I've become as successful as I have financially?
Yeah, I would say, always looking to the future and trying to figure it out. I spent a lot of time crunching numbers on spreadsheets and just trying to figure things out with people that I knew that were successful. I talked to them and asked them what to do, take people to lunch, go to lunch with them. So, I spent a lot of time working on that. It wasn't, I think a lot of people have plans or hopes or dreams, but you've actually got to take the time to work the numbers out and come up with a strategy and then make sure you're doing something to help yourself move forward. I was always trying to figure it out. And, it's like, okay, well, let's put a budget together and let's save some money. Let's, figure out where we're going to spend it. So, it doesn't come without work. Even real estate, people say, oh, real estate's passive income. I don't really view it as passive income. I mean, I've worked really hard to make this stuff work and make sure, even now, knowing, hey, where are my expenses going? Understanding what's costing me money. What can I do to save money? I mean, am I better off with carpet? Am I better off with tile? Those kinds of things, So it's not as passive as some people think it is. It's work, but then, when it starts to pay off, it becomes fun. So, and then you start to see a light at the end of the tunnel where, hey, I'm going to be able to retire one day and I'm going to be able to live comfortably. So, and then, that's the light at the end of the tunnel for you.
Yeah, thanks. I know we're running short on time, but I just want to ask about your financial advisor. How come not do it yourself?
Well, I don't love stocks and I don't love that. I guess you can. It would just take too much time, and I don't have the passion for it. It's someone that was a previous employee of mine that has now, moved on. So I have a lot of trust with him, and it's just not something I want to do. I'm not passionate about it.
Yep, makes sense. So just a couple rapid fire questions here to close. If you're comfortable sharing, what's been your range of household income, excluding the real estate, I guess?
Yeah, that's because the real estate's hard. So, I started out in 2001. So I guess the first year was 2002, making about 60,000. By around 2005, I was making 100 to 120. that's remained the same for me pretty much the entire time. And my wife and I got married in 2006, and she was making about 70 to 85,000. So
good for you guys.
Yeah.
How old were you when you became a millionaire? Do you remember?
Yeah, that was probably, I can remember figuring up our net worth. I don't know. It was probably 6 or 7 years ago. You know, as the real estate values went up and the stock market went up, it happened pretty fast, right? So from $1 million to $2 million to 2.7 million came way faster than 0 to $1 million. So that's 6, 7 years ago, probably, or so.
So just final question here, Travis. I mean, what's your final advice if you're giving it to somebody? I know you mentioned that you mentor a guy who's 28, I think you said, right?
Yeah.
What advice would you give? Or as you look back on your story, is there something you wish you would have done differently?
Not too many regrets. You know, I mean, I could say there was investments I should have made, but I think the number one thing always done, and my wife has always done, is, you know, live a little bit below your means and save that money. As you live below your means and you make investments, you earn more and more money. And so then what was, you know, it doesn't take you long to where your income now is high enough that you can do those things you wanted to do before and still save money. Whereas before, maybe you would have been doing it on credit. So, you know, stay away from debt. You know, driving old cars and things like that is just fine. It's a lot more comfortable to do that and have some money in the bank than it is to have a bunch of bills coming in every month and not know how you're going to pay them.
Well, thanks so much. Really good advice, Travis. Really appreciate you coming on. Net worth over 2.5 million, 2.7 to be exact.
Yep.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate you sharing the time and taking some blunt questions from us. So
yeah.
Thanks for coming on the show.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for the interview.
Thanks, Travis.
Thanks for listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast with Clark Sheffield and Chase Mattinson. For more stories, investment opportunities, and information, check out our website at millionairesunveiled.com. See you next time when you'll hear from another everyday millionaire.